Senior Counselor Tawan's three-fingered hand trembled as he stared at the holographic display. The massive chamber, usually filled with the constant murmur of 1,000 different species discussing galactic politics, had fallen into an unsettling silence. Where Earth's solar system should have been, there was nothing but empty space. "Run the scan again," he ordered, his voice barely a whisper. The technical officer, a blue-skinned being named Keho, nodded and reset the system. The results remained the same. Earth and its entire solar system had simply vanished. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Senate was designed to inspire awe, with its crystal dome reaching hundreds of meters into the sky and walls that shifted colors with the mood of the gathered representatives. Today, those walls had taken on a deep purple hue, reflecting the collective anxiety of the assembly. "Counselor," called out Representative Mina, her feathered crest rising in agitation. "This is impossible. An entire solar system cannot just disappear." She stood from her hoverpod, her ceremonial robes floating around her slender frame. There must be some explanation. Taiwan raised his hand for silence as more representatives began to speak up. The humans had been part of the galactic community for barely 2 centuries, a mere blink in cosmic time. Yet their absence felt like a physical wound in the fabric of their society. "Show me the last recorded images," he commanded. The hologram shifted, displaying Earth as it had appeared during the previous Standard Month's routine survey. The blue-green planet spun peacefully, surrounded by its primitive orbital stations and early colony attempts on its red neighbor, Mars. Representative Dujin, a crystalline being from the outer rim, chimed in with a musical tone. The humans were scheduled to present their annual technology progress report next week. They seemed quite excited about some breakthrough in quantum mechanics. The mention of the upcoming presentation caused Tawan's secondary hearts to skip a beat. He remembered his last conversation with the human ambassador, Kang. The man had smiled in that peculiar way humans did, showing his teeth, a gesture that still made many species uncomfortable, and mentioned that humanity had finally figured something out. "Access the Earth observation logs for the past standard year," Tawan ordered. The hologram flickered as data streamed in. Everything appeared normal until 3 days ago, when all signals from the solar system simply stopped. No distress calls, no unusual energy readings, nothing. It was as if someone had simply erased that section of space from reality. Kaiho moved his fingers over the control panel, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Counselor, I'm detecting trace amounts of an unknown particle signature around the area. It's unlike anything in our database." The chamber erupted in worried whispers. Unknown science was dangerous science. This was one of the founding principles of the Galactic Senate. Yet somehow, humanity had managed to do something that thousands of years of combined galactic knowledge said was impossible. Representative Sujin, known for her calm demeanor even in crisis, floated forward in her environmental pod. "Perhaps we should consider the possibility that this was intentional." Her words caused another wave of murmurs through the chamber. "The humans have always been different." Taiwan knew she was right. Humans had progressed faster than any species in recorded history, moving from primitive combustion engines to rudimentary faster-than-light travel in less than 3 centuries. They asked questions that made senior scientists uncomfortable and proposed solutions that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "Check the mining outpost on their system's outer rim," Taiwan suggested. The hologram shifted again, showing the automated station that had been monitoring the system's Kuiper belt. The station was there, still functioning, but its logs showed something strange. In the hours before all contact was lost, it had recorded massive energy spikes throughout the system. Representative Han, a silicon-based life form, spoke up. "Those energy readings, they're similar to theoretical models for space-time manipulation, but the power requirements would be..." He trailed off, his crystalline form pulsing with worried lights. Taiwan felt a chill run through his body. The humans had always been fascinated by the impossible. Their entertainment, which many senators had studied out of curiosity, was filled with stories of overcoming insurmountable odds and achieving the unachievable, as they somehow turned those dreams into reality. Contact every observation post within 50 light-years of Earth's location, he ordered. Search for any unusual readings, any sign of where they might have gone. The command set off a flurry of activity as communications officers began broadcasting urgent messages across the galaxy. As the chamber buzzed with activity, Ta-1 remembered something else from his last meeting with Ambassador Kang. The human had asked about ancient legends regarding galactic cycles and great migrations of civilizations. At the time, Ta-1 had dismissed it as typical human curiosity about history. Now he wondered if there had been more to those questions. "Sir," Kehoe called out, his voice tight with tension, "we're receiving reports from the outer monitoring stations. They've detected a faint trail of those unknown particles, leading." He paused, double-checking his readings, "leading toward the galactic core." The implications of that discovery sent shockwaves through the chamber. The galactic core was considered too dangerous for exploration, its dense star fields and intense radiation making it impossible to navigate safely. Or at least, that's what everyone had believed until now. Representative Mina's voice cut through the chaos. "They didn't just move their planet," she said, her feathers now fully erect in amazement. "They moved their entire solar system. Do you understand what this means? The power required, the technology needed." Tai-1 did understand. Humanity hadn't just taken a step forward, they had made a leap that should have been impossible. And they had done it right under the Senate's nose, while still attending trade conferences and submitting progress reports about their developing technology. As the reality of the situation sank in, Ta-1 couldn't help but wonder what else humanity had been hiding, and more importantly, what had driven them to take such a drastic step. The humans had always been unpredictable, but this was beyond anything anyone had imagined possible. Looking at the empty space where Earth should have been, Ta-1 made a decision. "Prepare my ship," he announced to the chamber. "And contact the Archive Masters. We need to review every interaction we've ever had with humanity. Something tells me we missed some very important clues along the way." The walls of the chamber had shifted to a deep blue, matching the mood of uncertainty and wonder that had replaced the initial shock. Humanity had always been an anomaly in the galactic community. Now they had proven just how different they truly were. The question that remained was, why? Hejin's scaled fingers moved across the holographic controls as she replayed the footage for the third time. The soft blue light of the archive room reflected off her iridescent skin, creating patterns that danced across the ancient walls. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Humans had gone from simple electric lights to breaking the bounds of their atmosphere in just over a century. "This can't be right," she muttered, her tail twitching with agitation. The historical records were clear, but they defied everything she knew about technological progression. Most species took at least 5 centuries to move from basic electricity to powered flight, let alone reaching space. The archive room hummed with the soft sounds of quantum processors as they sorted through millions of years of galactic history. Hejin had been tasked by the Senate to find any historical precedent for such rapid advancement. So far, she had found nothing even remotely similar. Another archive worker, Dae-sung, floated over on his gravity pad. His crystalline form sparkled in the dim light as he examined the records. "Found anything useful?" he asked, his voice creating harmonic resonances in the air. "Look at this," Hejin said, expanding the timeline display. In 1903, they achieved their first powered flight. By 1969, they had reached their moon. That's just 66 years. She shook her head in disbelief. The Centaurians took 400 years to make the same progress, and they were considered prodigies. The display showed grainy footage of the first human moon landing. The Jinn had watched it dozens of times now, still amazed by the primitive technology they had used. By galactic standards, their spacecraft had been little more than a metal box with engines, yet they had succeeded. "There's more," she continued, pulling up another set of records. 20 years after reaching their moon, they had functioning orbital stations. 30 years after that, they had colonies on Mars. The development curve is exponential. She paused the display on an image of the first Martian settlement. It's as if they were in a hurry. Day-Sung crystalline structure pulsed with thought patterns. What about their scientific understanding? Surely they must have had gaps in their knowledge. He-Jin pulled up the educational records. That's even stranger. They developed theories about quantum mechanics before they fully understood classical physics. They proposed the existence of black holes before they had telescopes powerful enough to see them. She gestured at the flowing data. It's like they were working backward from some future knowledge. The archives contain detailed observations of human development, collected by various galactic observation posts over the centuries. He-Jin had found numerous reports of humans making technological leaps that seemed to skip crucial developmental stages. Look at this report from their year 2010, she said, highlighting a section of data. A human child created a working fusion reactor for a school project. The Senate dismissed it as a fluke, but now, she trailed off, thinking about the implications. Day-Sung moved closer to examine the records. Their pattern of discovery is chaotic. No logical progression, no systematic development. They just seem to stumble into advanced concepts. He-Jin nodded, pulling up more recent records. And their responses to new technology are bizarre. When we officially contacted them and shared our standard welcome package of basic scientific principles, they didn't react with the usual awe or confusion. Instead, they started asking questions about advanced theoretical concepts that weren't even included. The display showed a series of human scientific papers published shortly after first contact. What had seemed like primitive attempts to understand galactic science now looked more like careful probing for information. They were testing us. He-Jin realized, her scales darkening with concern. Every time they submitted a technology progress report, they were gauging our reactions, seeing how much we knew. She quickly accessed the trade records. Humans had always been eager to exchange scientific knowledge, but their requests had seemed random and unfocused. Now, looking at the pattern of their inquiries, she could see a hidden purpose. They were filling in gaps, she said, more to herself than to Day-Sung. Very specific gaps in very specific areas of knowledge. The kind of knowledge you'd need if you were planning to. She stopped, her eyes widening. Day-Sung's crystalline form flickered with realization. If you were planning to move an entire solar system. He-Jin's fingers flew over the controls, pulling up the most recent human scientific submissions. What had seemed like basic research into quantum mechanics now revealed subtle hints of something far more advanced. We need to show this to the Council, she said, quickly copying the relevant records. The humans didn't just suddenly develop the ability to move their solar system. They'd been working toward this for centuries, hiding their true progress behind a facade of normal development. As she prepared to leave the archive room, He-Jin glanced one last time at the timeline of human advancement. What had seemed impossible now looked more like a carefully orchestrated performance, designed to hide the truth until the moment they chose to reveal it. The question isn't how they did it, she said to Day-Sung as they headed for the council chamber. The question is why they waited until now to show us what they're really capable of. The soft blue light of the archive room faded behind them, leaving the ancient records to their eternal silence. Somewhere out there, humanity was proving that impossible was just another word for not trying hard enough. A very human phrase that He-Jin was beginning to understand all too well. Jin-Ho stood before the emergency council, his ceremonial robes feeling unusually heavy as he adjusted them. The chamber was packed with representatives from across the galaxy, all waiting to hear his report on the warning signs they had missed about humanity's true capabilities. Honored Council, he began, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. I have gathered evidence of numerous incidents that we wrongly dismissed over the years. He gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. 40 years ago, on Earth, a 7-year-old human child solved the Corinthian equation, while arranging wooden blocks. The display showed footage of a small human girl playing with simple geometric shapes. When questioned, she said the pattern just made sense to her. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Corinthian equation had stumped the galaxy's best mathematicians for millennia. Even the most advanced quantum computers struggled with its complexity. We dismissed it as a fluke. Jin-Ho continued, his antennae twitching with remembered embarrassment. Our experts claimed she must have accidentally arranged the blocks in a way that mimicked the solution. We didn't investigate further. The next image showed a crude Earth structure that humans called a garage. 20 years ago, a human teenager allegedly reversed quantum decay in this primitive workspace. Using parts from what they call washing machines and microwave ovens, he achieved what our finest laboratories deemed impossible. Representative Yoon Seo raised a limb for attention. But surely their primitive technology couldn't have supported such an advancement. Jin-Ho nodded grimly. That's exactly what we thought. We sent investigators who confirmed the equipment was too basic to achieve quantum manipulation. Yet now, looking at the records with fresh eyes, he expanded the image, highlighting seemingly random details. These modifications weren't primitive at all. They were brilliantly disguised advanced technology. The display shifted to show more incidents. A human university student who accidentally discovered a new form of energy while making coffee. A retired human who built a gravity manipulation device while trying to fix his garden tools. A human child who drew perfectly accurate diagrams of hyperdimensional space because she saw them in her dreams. Pattern after pattern, Jin-Ho said, his voice growing more intense, always presented as accidents, flukes, or impossible claims, always dismissed by our experts as human exaggeration or coincidence. He brought up a timeline of human technological development. Look at their entertainment media, what they call science fiction. Time travel, faster than light drives, dimensional manipulation. We thought they were just imagining impossible things, but now. He paused, letting the implications sink in. They were documenting their actual research. A voice called from the back. It was senior archivist Minji, her bioluminescent spots pulsing with agitation, hiding their discoveries in plain sight, disguised as entertainment. Jin-Ho nodded. Exactly. And there's more. He displayed footage from various human scientific conferences. Watch their scientists closely. When presented with advanced galactic concepts, they never showed proper surprise or confusion. Instead, they asked oddly specific questions about limitations and theoretical boundaries. The chamber grew quiet as the council members began to understand. Humanity hadn't been learning from them. They had been probing for weaknesses in galactic scientific understanding. 3 years ago, Jin-Ho continued, a human physicist published a paper claiming to have found errors in our standard model of spacetime. We dismissed it as a misunderstanding of advanced concepts. He enlarged the paper's conclusions, but look at the mathematical proofs. They weren't errors in our understanding. They were deliberate blind spots we had built into our public scientific database. Representative Seo leaned forward, her crystalline form catching the light. Are you suggesting they knew we were hiding things from them? Not just knew, Jin-Ho replied. They had already surpassed our understanding and were checking to see if we were being truthful with them. He brought up one final image. A human child's drawing from a year ago, showing Earth and its solar system surrounded by strange geometric patterns. This was dismissed as childish imagination, he said quietly. But these patterns exactly matched the quantum signatures we detected when their solar system vanished. The chamber erupted in shocked discussions. Jin-Ho waited for the noise to settle before delivering his final revelation. And perhaps most telling of all, 2 days before they disappeared, human representatives submitted a request to access our oldest historical records, specifically those dealing with mass planetary relocations during the First Galaxy era. He let that sink in before continuing. They knew something that made them decide to leave. And all these years, while we thought we were carefully monitoring their development, they were actually. He trailed off, struggling to find the right words. They were studying us, finished Senior Counselor Ta-1. Every accident, every seeming coincidence, every apparent mistake. They were testing our reactions, measuring our responses, gauging our true level of advancement. Jin-Ho nodded solemnly. And now they're gone, having done something we thought impossible. The question isn't how they managed it. The question is what they learned that made them decide to leave so suddenly. As the council chambers erupted in urgent discussions, Jin-Ho stared at the image of the child's drawing. Somewhere out there, humanity was proving that everything the galaxy thought it knew about physics, about development, about limitations, might be wrong. And that realization was perhaps the most frightening warning sign of all. Jin-Ho stood before the emergency council, his ceremonial robes rustling as he adjusted them nervously. The vast chamber, with its floating platforms and bioluminescent walls, held representatives from 500 worlds. All eyes, sensory organs, and neural receptors were fixed on him as he prepared to share the disturbing patterns they had overlooked. 40 years ago, he began, activating the central hologram. We recorded this incident at a human educational facility called a kindergarten. The image showed a small human child playing with colored blocks on the floor. This 5-year-old child, while simply playing, solved the Corinthian equation, a mathematical problem that had baffled our greatest minds for millennia. The chamber filled with murmurs as the recording played. The child hummed quietly while arranging blocks in a pattern that perfectly represented the equation's solution. When her teacher asked what she was making, she had simply replied, "It's how the universe folds, silly." We dismissed it. Jin-Ho continued, his secondary appendages trembling slightly. Our experts said it was impossible for a primitive species to grasp such concepts. They claimed it was mere coincidence, a random arrangement that happened to match the equation. He switched to another recording, this one showing what humans called a garage, a primitive storage structure attached to their dwellings. 20 years ago, in this basic shelter, using parts from common household devices, a human teenager reversed quantum decay. Again, we refused to believe it was possible. The footage showed a young human male explaining his experiment to horrified Galactic Science Authority inspectors. He had used components from entertainment devices, food preparation units, and cleaning machines to achieve what the galaxy's most advanced laboratories could not. Look here, Jin-Ho highlighted specific parts of the crude device. What we thought were primitive electronic components were actually disguised quantum manipulators. The boy hadn't accidentally discovered anything. He knew exactly what he was doing. Senator Myray, her crystalline form glowing with concern, interrupted. But their level of technology was a carefully maintained facade. Jin-Ho finished. Consider this pattern. He displayed a timeline of human technological development. Every major breakthrough was preceded by multiple accidents or lucky discoveries by children or amateurs. Too many to be coincidence. He showed more footage. A human child drawing perfectly accurate multidimensional equations in the sand at a recreation area. An elderly human accidentally creating a gravity nullification field while attempting to repair a ground transportation device. A group of young humans building what they claimed was a science fair project that somehow manipulated quantum entanglement. Each incident was investigated and dismissed. Jin-Ho said, his voice growing stronger. We convinced ourselves that humans were simply prone to lucky accidents. We ignored the pattern forming before our eyes. He brought up records from human research facilities. The primitively equipped laboratories they showed to galactic inspectors. The seemingly basic experiments they claimed to be conducting. But now, looking closer, Jin-Ho highlighted subtle details. Disguised equipment, hidden power signatures, and impossibly advanced modifications concealed as crude repairs. They weren't just hiding their true capabilities, he explained. They were testing our reactions. Every time we dismissed their achievements, they learned more about our own limitations and blind spots. The chamber grew silent as Jin-Ho displayed his most disturbing evidence, 1 week before their disappearance, this appeared in a human child's educational facility. The hologram showed a crayon drawing of Earth and its solar system, surrounded by complex geometric patterns. These patterns exactly matched the quantum signatures we detected when they vanished. Senior Counselor Taiwan leaned forward. Are you suggesting they were preparing this move for generations? Yes, Jinho replied. But more importantly, I believe they were waiting to see if we would recognize what they were doing. Each accidental discovery was a test. Each coincidental breakthrough was an opportunity for us to prove we could be trusted with their true level of advancement. He paused, letting his words sink in. And we failed. Every single time, we chose to believe in our own superiority, rather than accept the evidence before us. Representative Su Jin raised her feathered crest. Why maintain such an elaborate deception? Why not simply reveal their capabilities? Jin Ho gestured to the final piece of evidence, a request filed by human representatives just days before their disappearance. They had asked to access the oldest sections of the Galactic Archives, specifically records relating to ancient cosmic threats and mass planetary relocations. They knew something was coming, he said quietly, something that made them decide to leave. And because we had repeatedly proven ourselves unwilling to acknowledge their true capabilities, they chose not to warn us directly. As the council chamber erupted in worried discussions, Jinho stared at the child's crayon drawing. Somewhere out there, humanity was proving that everything the galaxy thought it knew about development, about limitations, about what was possible, might be completely wrong. And that realization was perhaps the most terrifying warning sign of all. Yunni's six-fingered hands danced over the quantum detection array as she studied the strange patterns left in Earth's wake. The observation station's dim lighting cast a soft glow on her silvery skin as she worked, her large eyes reflecting the complex data streams floating before her. Come look at this, she called to her research partner, Min-Su. The crystalline being floated closer, his form pulsing with curious light patterns. These quantum signatures, they're not decay patterns from their departure. They're a message. Min-Su's crystal facets shifted to focus on the data. How can you be sure? Yunmei adjusted the detection parameters, revealing a subtle pattern hidden within the quantum noise. See these regular intervals. Natural quantum disturbances never show this kind of organization. The humans encoded something here. The observation station hung in space where Earth's moon once orbited. Its sensitive instruments pointed toward the void where humanity's solar system had vanished. For days, scientists from across the galaxy have been studying the residual energy patterns, looking for clues to humanity's destination. Watch this, Yunmei said, isolating a specific sequence. The pattern shifted and reformed, revealing a complex mathematical structure. It's similar to how humans encode their digital data, but using quantum states instead of binary code. Min-Su's crystalline form flickered with excitement. Can you decode it? I'm trying. Yun's fingers moved faster, applying various encryption algorithms. The strange thing is, parts of it seem designed to be obvious, while others are incredibly complex. It's like they wanted to make sure only those who truly understood quantum mechanics could read the whole message. A soft chime indicated a successful decryption of the first layer. Simple coordinates appeared, pointing toward the galactic core. But embedded within those coordinates were more complex patterns, hints of something deeper. They're testing us again, Yunmei realized. Just like they've been doing for centuries. They left a trail, but they want to make sure we're advanced enough to follow it safely. She brought up a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, highlighting the decoded coordinates. Look at this path they've marked. It weaves through areas of space we've always considered too dangerous to navigate. Regions of intense radiation, gravitational anomalies, quantum instabilities. Min-Su pulsed thoughtfully. Areas that would destroy any ship using conventional drives. But if you had the right technology. Exactly. Yunmei overlaid the quantum signature patterns onto the map. These aren't just breadcrumbs showing where they went. Their instructions, highly advanced instructions for safely traversing these regions. She focused the sensors on a particular quantum sequence, one that seemed to pulse with an almost deliberate rhythm. As she adjusted the detection parameters, the pattern resolved into a complex set of equations. "This is brilliant," she whispered. "They encoded the key to their propulsion system right here, but you'd need to already understand advanced quantum physics to even recognize it as technology rather than background noise." Min Su moved closer to the display. "Why go to such lengths? Why not simply tell us where they were going?" Yunmei sat back in her gravity chair, her eyes still fixed on the dancing patterns. "Because they're not just leaving a trail, they're teaching us. Each layer of encryption we crack reveals not just information about their path, but the scientific principles we need to follow them safely." She brought up another sequence, this one even more complex. "Look at how this pattern changes over time. It's not static, it's evolving. The longer we study it, the more it reveals, but only if we can keep up with its complexity." A new alert chimed. Another layer successfully decoded. This one revealed a warning about massive gravitational disturbances ahead in humanity's path. But more than that, it showed how to navigate through them using principles of space-time manipulation that the Galactic Senate had thought impossible. "They're not just showing us where they went," Yunmei said softly. "They're showing us how they did it, but they've structured it so we have to earn each piece of knowledge. Prove we're ready for it." Min Su's crystalline form pulsed with understanding. Like parents teaching children to walk, they don't just carry them to the destination. They let them learn each step themselves. Yunmei nodded, still tracking the evolving patterns. "And like good teachers, they've left hints for when we struggle." She highlighted another sequence, one that seemed to pulse encouragingly whenever they successfully decoded a layer. As she worked, more stations across the galaxy began picking up similar quantum signatures, each containing its own piece of the puzzle. Humanity had created an intricate web of knowledge, a trail of scientific breadcrumbs leading not just to their destination, but to a greater understanding of the universe itself. "They want us to follow them," Yunmei said, her voice filled with wonder. "But more than that, they want us to be ready for whatever made them leave in the first place. Each piece of this trail makes us stronger, more prepared." She looked out the station's viewport at the empty space where Earth once orbited. Somewhere out there, humanity was waiting, watching to see if their galactic neighbors could rise to the challenge they had left behind. The quantum patterns continued their complex dance, offering their secrets to those wise enough to understand and humble enough to learn. Humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, it seemed, wasn't just the trail they had left. It was the journey of discovery they had designed for those who would follow. Sang Min's fist crashed against the council table, causing the holographic displays to flicker. His usual blue skin had darkened to a deep indigo with frustration. Around him, the gathered council members flinched at his uncharacteristic display of emotion. "Look at this," he said, pulling up footage from a human research facility from 5 years ago. "They invited our scientists to observe their primitive antimatter experiments. See how their containment field keeps failing." The video showed human scientists appearing frustrated as their antimatter containment repeatedly collapsed. "Now watch this," he continued, his voice trembling. His fingers danced across the controls, bringing up a different set of readings from the same day. "These energy signatures we dismissed as background radiation. They're actually the byproduct of dimensional folding. While we were watching their fake containment failures, they were bending space-time in the basement below." Senior Counselor Taiwan leaned forward, his 3 eyes narrowing. "Are you certain about this?" Sangmin nodded vigorously. "After they disappeared, I went back through all our monitoring data. The patterns are everywhere. Every time they invited us to observe their failures, they were actually testing something far more advanced nearby." He brought up more records, dozens of them. Each showed humans struggling with what the galaxy considered basic technology, while hidden readings revealed sophisticated experiments happening just out of sight. Remember their Mars colony? Sang-min pulled up images of the human settlement on the red planet. They claimed they needed our help with basic atmospheric processors. Meanwhile, they were secretly developing technology to move entire planets. We gave them outdated terraforming manuals while they were already mastering gravitational manipulation. Representative Jia, her feathered crest rippling with concern, spoke up. But their scientific papers, their research publications, all carefully crafted deceptions, Sang-min interrupted. They published papers about struggling with fusion power while their children were building zero-point energy devices in their homes. They asked for help understanding basic space-time theory while they were already developing technology to fold dimensions. He displayed a timeline of human technological development, the official version they had presented to the galaxy. Beside it, he showed the real progression he had pieced together from hidden readings and overlooked data. Every failure was calculated, he explained, his voice bitter. Every time they asked for help, every time they seemed to struggle with basic concepts, they were actually testing our responses, gauging our level of technology, assessing whether we could be trusted with their true capabilities. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't been the struggling young species they'd all assumed. They had been masters of deception, hiding their true nature behind a carefully constructed mask of primitive development. Here's the most damning evidence, Sang-min said, bringing up a new set of readings. 2 days before they disappeared, we detected what we thought was a failed attempt at generating a stable wormhole. We even sent them a message offering assistance. He laughed humorlessly. They were actually creating a network of dimensional anchors around their entire solar system. The failed experiment was just a cover for the final preparations of their departure. Representative Kang, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation, asked, "But why? Why maintain such an elaborate deception?" Sang-min's expression softened slightly. I think they were protecting themselves. And maybe protecting us too." He brought up one final piece of evidence, a children's drawing found in an abandoned human school. It showed Earth surrounded by dark, ominous shapes approaching from the direction of the galactic core. "They saw something coming," he said quietly, "something that made them decide to leave. But instead of telling us directly, they spent centuries preparing in secret. They knew that if they revealed their true capabilities too soon, it would change everything. Our society, our power structure, our understanding of the universe itself." The council chamber remained silent as Sang-min's words sank in. Humanity hadn't just deceived them. They had orchestrated one of the most elaborate scientific and cultural camouflages in galactic history. "We thought we were the teachers," Sang-min concluded, his voice heavy with realization. "We thought we were guiding a young species toward galactic civilization. But they were light years ahead of us, watching, waiting, preparing for something we couldn't even see." He stared at the empty space in the holographic display where Earth's solar system should have been. "They didn't just hide their true nature from us," he said softly. "They created an entirely false version of themselves for us to interact with. And we never questioned it because it matched our expectations perfectly." The implications were staggering. Every human breakthrough, every apparent struggle, every request for assistance, all had been part of an intricate performance designed to conceal their true capabilities until the moment they chose to reveal them. Representative Jaya spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. "If they could hide this much for so long, what else might they be capable of?" Sang-min had no answer. He could only stare at the evidence of humanity's great deception, wondering what could have been so terrible that it drove an entire civilization to maintain such an elaborate facade for centuries, only to vanish when they could no longer hide their true nature. In the silence of the council chamber, the truth hung heavy. They hadn't been studying humanity. Humanity had been studying them. And now, somewhere in the vastness of space, Earth and its people were finally showing their true face to the universe. Du-hyun's mandibles clicked nervously as he manipulated the ancient star charts floating before the emergency council. The holographic display showed a pattern of darkness spreading across multiple galaxies, moving slowly but inexorably toward their own. The humans found these records centuries ago, he explained, his segmented fingers tracing the path of destruction. They were hidden in our own archives, buried under layers of bureaucratic classification, records so old that most of us had forgotten they existed. The chamber was silent as the council members watched the visualization. Entire galaxies winked out one by one, consumed by something that left only emptiness in its wake. The pattern was clear, and it was heading directly toward them. They tried to warn us, Du Hyun continued, bringing up records of human scientific papers submitted to the Galactic Senate. Look at these publications. Every few years, they would submit research about cosmic-scale threats, theories about galaxy-consuming entities. We dismissed them as primitive fears, products of their overactive imaginations. He displayed a series of human entertainment media, what they called movies and books, all featuring themes of cosmic horror and galaxy-spanning threats. We thought these were just stories, but they were warnings, encoded in their culture, trying to prepare us for what they had discovered. Senior Counselor Mina floated forward, her crystalline form pulsing with concern. How did they find these records when our own archivists missed them? Do Hyun brought up more data. Because they were looking for them specifically. They had detected trace evidence of the entity's approach centuries ago, but they knew we wouldn't believe them without proof, so they searched our oldest archives, piecing together the pattern while pretending to study our history. The display shifted to show readings from human deep space telescopes. What had seemed like primitive instruments were actually incredibly sophisticated devices, carefully disguised to appear less advanced than they were. See these energy signatures. Du Hyun highlighted patterns in the data. They match exactly with the ancient records. The humans were tracking the entity's movement across neighboring galaxies, confirming what the historical records had warned about. Representative Ta Won's scales flickered with agitation. Why didn't they just tell us directly? They tried. Du Hyun brought up diplomatic records. Every few decades, they would raise concerns about long-range cosmic threats. But our bureaucracy, he clicked his mandibles in frustration. We required multiple committees to review their evidence, years of debate about sharing classified information, endless discussions about whether they were ready for certain knowledge. The holographic display showed the entity's progress through nearby galaxies. Based on the ancient records and humanity's calculations, it would reach their galaxy within 1,000 years, a mere blink in cosmic time. The humans knew we wouldn't act quickly enough, Du Hyun explained. Our civilization is stable, but slow to change. They realized they needed to prepare independently, without waiting for galactic approval. He showed new data, subtle energy readings from Earth's solar system over the past century. What had seemed like background radiation was actually evidence of massive engineering projects, hidden in plain sight. They weren't just building technology to move their solar system, he said quietly. They were developing weapons, defenses, things we had never even imagined. Every time we detected something unusual, they would cover it up with an elaborate show of primitive experiments gone wrong. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't abandoned them. They had moved to a strategic position, preparing to face a threat that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten about. And now look at this, Du Hyun said, overlaying the quantum trail they had left behind with the ancient star charts. Their path takes them to specific locations mentioned in the old records, places where previous civilizations had tried to fight the entity. They're gathering information, preparing for a battle that our ancestors fought and lost. Representative Su Jin's feathers rustled. Can this entity be stopped? The ancient records are unclear, Du Hyun admitted. But the humans, they seem to think they have found a way. Look at these patterns in their quantum trail. He highlighted complex sequences in the data. These aren't just navigation markers. They're pieces of a weapon design, something that could theoretically affect space-time itself. The display showed the full scope of humanity's preparation, Centuries of hidden development, all building toward a single purpose. They hadn't fled in fear, they had moved into position to protect their galaxy. They left us these clues, Du Hyun concluded, not just to follow them, but to prepare ourselves. Each piece of their trail contains information we need to understand the threat and develop our own defenses. He looked out at the assembled council members, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays. The humans saw what was coming. They tried to work within our system, but when that failed, they chose to act on their own. Now they're out there, positioning themselves between our galaxy and an ancient horror that devours entire civilizations. The council chamber remained silent as the ancient star charts continued their slow rotation, showing the inexorable approach of something that had haunted their ancestors' nightmares. And somewhere out there, humanity was preparing to face it, hoping their galactic neighbors would finally understand the warnings they had been trying to share all along. Su-Jin stood at the main observation deck of the Galactic Senate Station, her crystalline form reflecting the sudden burst of light that signaled Earth's return. But the sight before her was nothing like the solar system that had vanished months ago. Earth and its neighboring planets had been transformed into something beyond imagination. Each planet was now encased in layers of gleaming technology, connected by webs of energy that pulsed with power beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The entire solar system had become a vast machine, a shield of impossible scale. "By the ancient stars," whispered Representative Minho beside her. His scaled skin had paled to a ghostly white as the human fleet emerged from dimensional space. Each vessel was larger than Earth's old moon, their surfaces covered in technology that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality around them. Su-Jin's sensors detected quantum signatures that defied analysis. "This is what they were building all those centuries," she said softly. "While we thought they were struggling with basic spaceflight, they were creating this." The fleet arranged itself in a defensive pattern that stretched across light years of space. Behind them, the transformed solar system began to pulse with energy that made the nearby stars look dim in comparison. A communication request chimed through the station's systems. The holographic display activated, showing a human face, one that Su-Jin recognized as Ambassador Kang, though he looked older now. "Greetings, Galactic Senate," he said, his voice carrying a weight of experience that hadn't been there before. "We apologize for our abrupt departure, but time was essential." Su-Jin stepped forward. "Ambassador, your solar system. The changes are beyond anything we thought possible." Kang smiled sadly. "We had to advance centuries of planned development into months. The entity is approaching faster than even our worst predictions suggested." The display shifted to show something that made Su-Jin's crystalline structure vibrate with fear. Beyond the human fleet, space itself seemed to be unraveling. A darkness deeper than the void was approaching, consuming everything in its path. "We spent centuries preparing," Kang explained. "Each failure we showed you, each primitive experiment, was cover for our real work. We were building this, a weapon system capable of fighting something that devours galaxies." New ships were still emerging from dimensional space, each one carrying technology that would have seemed like magic just months ago. Su-Jin watched as they took up positions, forming a barrier between the approaching darkness and the galaxy. "Why didn't you tell us?" asked Minho, his voice trembling. "Why hide all of this? Would you have believed us?" Kang's image showed a tired smile. "When we tried to warn you about the entity, your bureaucrats spent decades debating whether to even look at the evidence. We couldn't wait for committee approvals while that thing got closer." The station's sensors were picking up energy readings from Earth that broke every known law of physics. The planet itself had become a power source of unimaginable strength, channeling energy through the transformed solar system. "What we're about to attempt has never been done before," Kang continued. "We've learned from the failures of ancient civilizations, studied their attempts to fight this thing. We think we found a way, but we'll only get one chance." Su-Jin watched as more human ships appeared, each one carrying weapon systems that could have conquered the galaxy if humanity had wanted to. Instead, they had chosen to become its defenders. "The quantum trail we left behind," she said, understanding dawning. "Those weren't just breadcrumbs to follow you. They were instructions." "Yes," Kang nodded. "Everything we learned, everything we built. We left you the plans. If we fail, you'll need them. The entity can't be allowed to reach the galaxy." The transformed solar system began to move, positioning itself like the tip of a spear pointed at the approaching darkness. Energy pulses synchronized between the planets, creating patterns that hurt Sujin's sensors to observe. "You never abandoned us," she whispered. "You were protecting us all along." "Earth is humanity's home," Kang replied, his voice firm. "But the galaxy is our home too. We won't let it be devoured like the others." The darkness was visible now even to normal sight, a wound in space that consumed light itself. The human fleet began to power up weapons that bent reality, preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of an entire galaxy. "Stand ready," Kang said, his image starting to fade. "What comes next will change everything we thought we knew about the universe, and if we succeed," he smiled one last time, "perhaps the galaxy will finally be ready for humanity's real capabilities." Sujin watched as the human fleet engaged the entity, wielding power that their ancestors had hidden for centuries. They hadn't fled in fear or abandoned their neighbors. They had become the shield humanity had always meant to be, protecting a galaxy that had never truly understood them. Until now.